All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It is May 18, 2011. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Hope you had a wonderful day, because we sure have a wonderful show in store for you tonight with Kelly Bulkeley. Tonight, he is a dream researcher and author of 16 books, dream and psychology and religion related, that you can find at his website. That's kellybulkeley.com, and I'm gonna spell that for you, as well as post it in the text chat if you'd like to join us tonight over at TruthBrigade.com. kellybulkeley.com. That's KELLYBULKELEY.com is the website. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call tonight at 402-237-2525. That's 402-AFR-2525. It is so good to have you here tonight, Kelly. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Dreams are certainly a topic we are very interested in here, and came across your work. In fact, you came highly recommended. So I'm excited to have you here tonight.
Okay.
If you would, though, Kelly, this is your first time with us. Can you kind of give us a little insight into your path? What got you involved in dreams and dreaming and, in your research the last couple decades since?
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. And, like a lot of people who study dreams, I got going in a lot of ways from just curiosity about some of my own dream experiences. It's not like I grew up planning to be a dream researcher or anything like that. I don't know. I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker. Or I wanted to play center field for the San Francisco Giants. I realized that wasn't going to happen at a certain point. But no, late adolescence, I began having a series of recurrent nightmares that really got my attention, because it's not like I had any traumatic past. I had a really good family and went to good schools and did well, and just like everything kind of in my waking world was doing just fine. But I kept having these nightmares where I was being chased and pursued and attacked, and nothing I could ever do could help me escape. I couldn't run fast enough. I couldn't talk my way out of it. I couldn't hide. And what I realized was, everything that I was good at in the waking world was not helping me in these dreams. And so it got me thinking about what the dreams might be telling me, or what they might be sort of expressing about myself. And so I read some Freud, and I read some Jung, and some other books about dreams, and Faraday's books about dreams. And I came across Jung's idea of the shadow, of the idea that in our dreams, particularly in nightmares, we encounter shadow elements of our personality, aspects of ourselves that we don't express in our waking personality, but are in there, are part of us. And that idea really clicked with me. And the thing that set me sort of on the path of studying this subject, sort of as a full-time thing, was that as I sort of made that realization and sort of had that aha moment of, oh, that's what was going on in these dreams, that there are these shadow elements that I need to, take a look at, integrate into who I am. Once that realization came, the dreams themselves started to change, and those nightmares changed, and I stopped having nightmares in that form, and then I realized, wow, so there's kind of this back and forth thing that can get going between our dreams and our waking consciousness. And so that kind of launched the research and the graduate studies I did, and just have kind of continued to kind of motivate me to this day, is this idea that when we study dreams, we're studying this, kind of unconscious intelligence within each of us. It's really exciting.
Well, okay, so, gosh, so many questions already. Let me ask you, Okay, you brought up nightmares and running and fighting, and we frequently hear of that. What is your interpretation of why those dreams would be happening frequently?
Well, there's a lot of possible causes for recurrent nightmares, which happen actually more often with young children than any other age group. Recurrent nightmares happen to be pretty frequent, and it can be anything. It can be something mild in terms of just sort of a strange, sudden experience. A barking dog or a big truck or something that a child sees during the day can trigger a nightmare. But there can also be, references to, as I mentioned before, the issue of trauma. I mean, one of the classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder is recurrent nightmares. So sometimes recurrent nightmares have a relationship to, some sort of traumatizing event. And then there, I think with my dreams, there is the sense that there's this shadow dimension, that nightmares are part of the way we discover sort of the deeper unconscious aspects of ourselves, and that's a more, those are nightmares that have a sort of potentially healthy message. So there's a lot of, nightmares have a lot of potential causes. Sometimes, like I said, they reflect sort of a, suffering and distress, and other times they're, the first time we encounter something, we often react in fear, but we look a little more closely and we realize, that might have something of value. So.
Okay. I know there's definitely varying different lines of thoughts on dreams and dreaming, and you brought up Freud and Jung. Can you kind of tell us some of the basic differences between their theories?
Sure. Well, both of them were, totally inspired by their own dreams. Freud wrote his big book, The Interpretation of Dreams, largely around his own dream experiences and his efforts to understand them. And the same is true of Jung in a lot of his writings. So they're both, they both agree that dreams are important. They offer important insights into the unconscious aspects of the mind. Freud had this great phrase, the dreams are the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious. So this idea that really, if you want to understand what goes on in the human mind, sort of in these unconscious realms, dreams are a great means of learning about that. So the differences, I suppose, are Freud was most interested in looking at the roots of dreams in people's family life and early childhood development. It's where we get all the sort of early Oedipal stuff that Freud gets into. Whereas Jung was more looking at what the dreams were anticipating or hinting about future growth. So Freud kind of looked backward, Jung looked forward. Is one way I think of the difference between the two. Jung was interested in the process of what he called individuation, where the fullness of our psychological being comes into actuality, and dreams help kind of guide us along that path, he thought. And so, for him, yes, we can talk about, early family conflicts and all that stuff, but Jung was saying there's also this dimension of, looking ahead, sort of casting our gaze, envisioning what we might become. That's, I think, is a greater insight perhaps into what we're striving to achieve and maybe what stands in the way, as opposed to looking at the origins of what Freud would think was our disturbances. And there's a real complementarity. In fact, it's an interesting relationship. Between those two guys. Freud was kind of a father figure to Jung. Jung was kind of the rebellious son. They had a really intense relationship and friendship and rivalry. And so, I think to understand either of them, you have to understand both of them, or at least take both their ideas into account. So
absolutely. I agree. Well, what can you tell us? What exactly is going on when we are dreaming? I mean, okay, so we brought up Freud and Jung, but there's many other people, churches, in fact, or religions that say, oh, dreams mean nothing. It's just kind of like your hard drive defragmenting.
Yeah. Well, both Freud and Jung, and I'm not like trying to sell either of their theories. I mean, there are limitations and problems and such. And one of the things that people nowadays say is that Freud and Jung, their ideas don't square with brain research and what neuroscientists are telling us about how the brain operates in sleep. And there was a while there where that seemed to be the case. I tend to think now, actually, that the neurosciences, I mean, this goes off way on a tangent we shouldn't probably go down, but we shouldn't rule out Freud and Jung on the basis of brain science quite yet. But I think that it is interesting to learn that dreaming seems to be kind of hardwired into our species. I mean, we find reports of dreams in all cultures, all periods of history. Pretty much everybody has the same sort of patterns of brain activation hardwired into us during sleep that we associate with dreaming. And whether or not people, some people say, oh, I never remember dreams. And some people, their recall is very slim, but it still seems to be the case that just as sort of a built-in aspect of the way our brains work, during sleep we imagine these fantastic worlds. I think that's a really exciting finding of recent years. And so there's no clear sort of perfect theory that accounts for that or sort of explains what that all means, but that's...
Are we imagining it, though, or just simply the fact that we can imagine it make it, at least an aspect of reality? Yeah. And that's where it gets interesting when different human cultures have tried to kind of cultivate dreaming, like not just passively receiving a dream, shall we say, but actively trying to cultivate, influence, intensify dreaming. And that's, so it's both this is why I think it's such an interesting subject to study. It's both kind of an evolved part of the way our body works, but it's also totally interwoven with culture and language and, the symbolic worlds in which we live. So it's, to pull at one thread, you start to pull at a lot of different strands of the influences that go into a dream. Absolutely. Okay. Now, you mentioned that people use dreams for, we've had shamans on here, and we know that they use dream time to, with... they decide where they're going to go or what they're going to do, or, for instance, people say they have a problem in their life, maybe not necessarily a mathematical problem, but, something going on, or that they feel they need more guidance on and can ask for that. What do we call those types of dreams?
Yeah, well, dreams often revolve around issues that we're kind of emotionally invested in and concerned about. And so if there's something we're facing in our waking lives that's, we're really perturbed about, and that could be like a problem or a challenge, it's very likely that when we go to sleep, our mind is still going to be, pondering that, just in that different kind of mode of dreaming. And so, I'm reluctant to say that dreams, solve people's problems all by themselves, but I think that dreaming is part of the way we solve problems, in the sense of, trying out different possibilities, pondering different angles of the problem. I mean, that's what dreams are really good at, is going outside the box, looking at things from a really different, unusual, sometimes bizarre angle. And sometimes that can help. That can help, rethink an approach to a problem that helps you solve it. So again, did the dream solve it, or did you solve it with the help of your dreaming mind? I think, the latter is probably more accurate.
Do you think that we frequently program our dreams, or are they more commonly just seemingly random?
So what do you mean program? That's an interesting word.
Well, I mean, if somebody's focusing on a problem or issue or something something important to them that's going on in their life, and go to sleep with intent of dreaming about maybe an answer or a solution or, some type of information that could help them with their life path. Do you think most of our dreams are like that? And I would have to say probably mostly subconsciously, or do the dreams kind of give us what maybe they think we need to know? And that was really bad timing on that question, Kelly. I'm sorry. I hear the music.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. We can.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we come back from this short break. Stay tuned, everyone. Kelly Bulkeley here on Truth Brigade Radio. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com with our special guest tonight, Kelly Bulkeley. He is a dream researcher and visiting scholar at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California, as well as author of 16 books about dreaming and psychology, which you can find at his website. That's kellybulkeley.com. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at TruthBrigade.com. And I see a lot of questions and comments in the text chat, so please feel free to give us a call, and you can share those with us at 402-237-2525. And Kelly, what do you think about that? Are our dreams mostly programmed or perhaps subconsciously, or are dreams coming to us as kind of a wake-up call? This is something I think you need to know or pay attention to.
Yeah, well, I think, it's a great question, and it really goes to the heart of some of the mystery of dreaming, because it does seem that dreams are very responsive to what's going on in our waking lives. So, I'm just guessing, but, a person who's a radio host, I'm guessing from time to time you may have dreams about talking on the radio or about issues around that. And, I don't know, people who are bus drivers often dream about driving the bus. People who are cooks dream about cooking. There's a
Waitress nightmares, I remember those.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's, like you say, there's this other source of our dreams that seems to have... people refer to messages or, sort of things, motivations that come through the dream that seem to come from someplace other than the ego, than the me, some deeper part of the self, a higher part of the self. And there's some people who say, that's just the random craziness and people were making that up. And other people say, no, that's where dreaming becomes a kind of a spiritual or a religious avenue, So that's, as a researcher, I think that's really interesting because there are these aspects of dreams that you can't entirely explain in terms of what's, waking life, day residue or elements, and there is something deeper going on. So, I tend to answer the question. I think there's both of those influences. But it's those outside of the self messages that I think are really intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this, though. As far as interpretation, dream interpretation, there are obviously some benefits, but also some risks. Can you share some of that with us before we go further? Because I don't want anyone thinking, I had a dream about this. It must mean exactly this, and I'm totally doomed, or whatever.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, folk wisdom out there that's really right on, and a lot of, I think, unfortunate beliefs that maybe aren't so accurate. But I I think something that's really important to say right at the outset is that dreaming is a totally normal, natural, healthy part of the way our minds and our brains operate. And I feel I have to say that because sometimes people assume, particularly after Freud and Jung and all their, sort of psychoanalytic approaches, that to talk about dreams, you shouldn't do that unless you've got a therapist or an analyst or a psychiatrist or somebody who's an expert, right? And I think that's just that cuts us off from this, like I said, this natural resource we all have within us that I think we all get, intuitively. And even people who say, "Oh, I don't understand dreams," or "I never remember them." My experience is you get people just going a little bit, and it's like fish taking to water. We know within us this is part of who we are and how we experience and interact with the world. And so to interpret dreams is really at one level to just interact and try to understand this natural part of who we are. So in that sense, I think it's, you don't need experts, you don't need a PhD, or, you don't have to have written books to understand dreams. It's part of who we are. You can get in trouble if you don't pay attention to your own sort of responses and feelings as they emerge in looking at your own dreams, particularly other people's dreams. And we call this, from a Jungian perspective, projection. And there's nothing mysterious about it. It's just the idea that we often take things that we're feeling about ourselves and sort of attach them to someone or something else. And so this can be very easy to happen in dreams or talking about dreams when someone else has a dream and it triggers a strong reaction in you that you then sort of impose on someone else's dream. So that's where I think problems get going with interpretations, and Freud was terrible about this. Jung was somewhat better, not perfect, but Freud was terrible because people would come in and say, "Well, I had a dream about such and such," and he had certain pre-established ideas about what dreams mean, and he would basically tell the person, "Well, this is what your dream means," and if you don't agree with me, then you're resisting the truth of what I have to tell you, and that means that I'm doubly right. It was one of those kind of funhouse situations that's a danger. That's, if people think, they've got the magic key to other people's dreams, you can, I think, well, I don't want to get apocalyptic about it, but just it does damage to people's sort of own self-understanding, and it's pretty easy to avoid if you're just at all self-aware about how when we hear other people talk about their dreams, it brings up reactions that we that are grounded in our own experiences and our own perspectives, and we can share that with other people, and that can be helpful, and that can be part of the interpretation. But if we're not, if we're missing that self-awareness piece, that's where the trouble begins.
Okay. All right. So simply looking in a book or calling a dream interpreter or studying Freud or Jung or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that is exact. Just be, you wrote a article on your website about snakes. And, what do dreams of snakes mean? And I know people have preconceived notions about snakes or, rats or spiders or all sorts of different things. So to one person, they may be speaking their truth, but not necessarily true for the seeker.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And this is where kind of the art of dream interpretation comes in, because to take snake dreams as an example, there are many classic symbolic meanings for snakes in dreams. From sort of obviously the really negative ones, the biblical snake, sort of temptation and evil. Just snakes generally are deadly creatures. Some of them. But in other cultures, they're worshipped for their wisdom, their ability to regenerate, the way they shed their skin. So, there's a lot of symbolic energy generally around snakes, and like there are around a lot of things that occur in dreams. And so when we're talking about a particular dream of a particular kind of snake, then we look at, well, how do those kind of classic mythological meanings, how do those relate to kind of the here and now reality of the dreamer? A dream always comes to a person at a particular time, and so there's, this was Jung's problem in some ways, that he was always way up there in sort of collective symbol land and not always as connected with the dreamer and his or her current waking reality. And so, there's both of those dimensions always at play. So yeah, to just read a dream dictionary or consult your magic 8-ball of dream interpretation. It may give you one of those possibilities, and it may be actually a good one. I wouldn't say they're always wrong, but they're just one slice of the possibilities that every dream brings. And so I think an adequate dream interpretation has to inevitably have, kind of multiple dimensions of what might be going on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kelly, some people think that they don't dream, and maybe they do and they just don't remember it. What do you think about that? Do we all dream?
Yeah, well, there's been some studies about that people who wake up in, who are in a sleep laboratory and are awakened, people who say they never remember a dream sort of in the ordinary course of things, but they go in a sleep lab and they get awakened at certain stages of the night, and lo and behold, they remember a dream. So with some people, I think it's just a case that they don't remember the dreams they are having. With other people, it's possible that, we understand so little of this, really. I have to admit, the best research is still leaves big gaps in our understanding. And so I don't want to rule out the possibility that some people just don't dream. Like whatever is happening during sleep, that's not a part of it for them. If that's true, it seems to be a really small percentage of people, like somewhere on the order of 1% or something. But I hear that enough, and I don't want to apply that argument like, oh, well, you must be dreaming, but you just don't remember it. I maybe yes, maybe no. That's still open. But with that being said, it seems that most people do remember their dreams. That's a pretty steady part of life. And if I was going to estimate sort of across the population, it seems that most people remember maybe 1 or 2 dreams a week, something like that. That might be like the median. Most half the population more than that, half the population less, something like that. So.
Okay. Well, why is that? What's going on with our memory span in regards to dreams? Yeah. Well, it starts with the way our brain is functioning in such a different way during sleep. And we could talk for a long time about all of that, because the brain is just different parts of the brain are active, different sort of neurochemicals are active. There's just so much going on, and then we wake up and our brain just shifts in this really dramatic way to waking consciousness. And so right there's kind of a bridging challenge for any dream that how can we remember it from that one kind of brain state into the other? And I think a lot of the dreaming that we forget just doesn't get across that bridge. So dream recall, when we wake up,
is always.
Is it almost? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So when we wake up, is it kind of like a light, turning a light switch on or off? Because doesn't the brain kind of switch gears to opposing transmitter systems? Yeah. There's really complicated and interesting things that happen at those threshold moments, both when we fall asleep and when we wake up. And so it's not
actually, it's not like a light switch. I don't think at all. I think it's when we really look at it, there's some really kind of complicated shifting in a lot of different parts of the brain. But I think as we experience it, it can be like as if a light switch, suddenly clicked on. Like we were dreaming and suddenly, boom, you're awake. And so that, the transition sometimes can. I mean, there can be weird dream stuff that happens right upon awakening, just as there can be, sort of what are called hypnagogic images when we fall asleep, sort of brief bursts of imagery just as we're crossing that threshold. So, but yeah, with recall too, there's the circumstances of how we wake up matters a lot. If you wake up to an alarm clock and have to run out the door to wherever you got to go, that's probably a less, an environment less conducive to remembering whatever dreams you might remember, even if they made it at that sleep-to-wake threshold. I remember a student I taught many years ago said that when he was a kid, he assumed that people only dreamed on the weekends, because that was the only time he ever remembered his dreams, because during the week, he was just hopping out of bed and, eat breakfast, grab your lunch off to school.
Yeah, that's a cute idea. I'm sorry, Kelly, but it is that time. So can you hold that right there? And we will continue this when we return after this short break. Kelly Bulkeley here on Truth Brigade Radio. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. What isn't a dream with our special guest tonight, Kelly Bulkeley. And if you would, please continue. I just think that's so cute. I'm imagining, teacher, why do we only dream on weekends?
Yeah, and it's a natural assumption if that's been your experience, that you only have time on the weekends, to sort of wake up slowly after sort of, without an alarm clock, without the need to immediately jump out of bed and go do something. I mean, that's I think in this kid's experience, and so that's I think what he discovered was the rhythms of dream recall really vary depending on how we wake up, when it is, and sort of how ready we are to listen to a dream or to hear and remember it.
Yeah, I just have to say alarm clocks have been banned from my house because I have the same experience, and maybe, we have a caller on the line, so maybe we can talk about some of these things earlier, but my experience is alarm clocks, telephones, getting up to go to the bathroom, and light. If I look out the window or, sunlight or something like that, seems to just almost magically erase it. But, I'd like to get back into that. But we do have a caller on the line. It's unavailable, so if that is you, welcome to the show.
Hi, Christie. Hi, Tobias.
It's Kelly. How you doing tonight, Louie?
Evening, ma'am. How you doing? Anyways, first I would like to say you kids get off my lawn. And also, I have a question.
Okay. What's your question?
Yeah, I got nothing.
Okay. You called in for that?
I forgot what I was going to ask. I was on hold for too long.
Oh, well, okay. Let me give you a reminder. We're talking about dreams tonight, Louie.
Yeah, no, I forgot what dream I was going to bring up.
Okay.
Oh, well.
We'll bring up any of them. What, do you dream a lot, Louie?
Yeah, I do, but I forget them. So, I guess I'll be going now. See ya.
Oh, God. Okay. All of that and not even a joke from the Louie B tonight.
Just checking in, I guess. That's okay.
I guess so. Okay. All right. Okay, so, it sounds like I'm not the only one having problems remembering dreams, so maybe we can get back to that. Why, or what are some of the triggers or some of the reasons why people aren't remembering them?
Yeah, well, there's sometimes it's just a matter of sort of having a friendly attitude towards what dreams might have for us, and there's been some interesting research done by a guy named Michael Schradel, who's a friend who does dream research. He's a German guy, German psychologist, and he's done some studies where he's tracked people's dream recall in two different groups. In one group, he says he gives them kind of a prior instruction, like, dreams sometimes have interesting things to tell us about our personal life, like something very simple like that. And the other group, he didn't say anything like that, or he might have said something just neutral. And the people who got even that little extra prompting about, like, hey, there might be something to listen to in your dreams, their dream recall increased quite a bit more than the other group. So that's just a research finding that suggests, I think, that we're, our dreams will come, sort of a build it and they will come kind of attitude, that if you pay more attention to your dreams will pay more attention to you. The recall will be responsive to the interest you show in listening to the dreams. So it's not like an automatic thing, like just, press these buttons and your dream recall, automatically increases. But there seems to be, good reason to think that if you just kind of sort of invite your dream, just before you go to bed at night, think, if I had a dream tonight, I'll try to remember it. Just that little bit of intention actually increases dream recall, just right there. And over time, it's not, like I said, it's not an automatic thing, and you can go long stretches of time without remembering any dreams, and that can just be natural and normal. But just that extra little bit of intentionality of just a willingness to listen to a dream can increase recall, for some people really dramatically. So, which is interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you about cycles. It seems that, and a few other people mentioned this in the text chat as well, that I go through periods where the dreams are really, really vivid. I seem to remember, certainly not all, but a lot more than I would on a normal day, and then go through a period where I don't remember anything for a week or 2 weeks, and then back on again. 2 weeks, extremely vivid dreams. What's going on? I used to attribute it to, our female cycle.
Yeah.
And then I started hearing this from men as well. So could it have something to do with the moon or some other influence like that? Okay.
Well, you're asking great questions, because they're going right to kind of the, some of the still mysterious aspects of this. But there does seem to be some gender factors involved. And again, whether that's nature or nurture, I don't know whether, but it does seem to be the case that women tend to remember more dreams on average than do men. There's also a kind of an age thing that seems to happen, that younger people tend to remember dreams more than older people. But a thing I always emphasize is that they aren't absolute differences. Men remember plenty of dreams, and some women remember no dreams, and some old people remember lots and lots of dreams, and some young people remember barely any. So, but those seem to be influences or sort of factors in how much people remember their dreams, and sort of the role dreams seem to play. Now, there's also for some people during times of stress, something really hectic is going on in life, maybe a problem at work or a problem with family or a health crisis or something, and their dream recall really ramps up, in response to that. Some people, though, crisis hits and that their dreaming shuts down, or their sleep patterns change so much that they don't maybe remember their dreams as much, and it's only later that then the dreams come, so there, it's like I think a lot of times of the parallels between dreaming and the ocean, and just in the sense of like the waves. Waves are so complicated and have so many, there's so many different types and levels and aspects of them, and I think that's part of the way our dream recall works as well. There are these waves of things that from our personal life, from our bodies, from our collective evolved history, perhaps our spiritual being, our soul's journey, if that's how you look at the world, and that's all happening all at once, all the time. Mm-hmm. And so it makes each dream, I think, an interesting kind of embodiment of all of that. But it also makes it hard sometimes. Well, what's kind of in the foreground? What's maybe not as important, and how do we tease out those different levels?
Okay, do you think there's other influences as well, like perhaps the cycle of the moon or other planetary influences that could make those cycles or make dreams more vivid through one cycle? More... what am I trying? Because I know the moon controls or at least influences the tides and our cycles, and feminine cycles. So I'm wondering if the moon or there's other planetary influences that could be affecting why our dreams happen to be more vivid than others at times.
Yeah. Well, it's something that I try never to rule anything out as a possibility, and certainly with everything we know about how the moon influences all sorts of things on planet Earth and affecting us in various ways. I tend to think that we're going to find something about that. Planetary influences are harder to kind of tease out from other things that might be going on, but it's not something that's been actually studied in any particular way. So I feel I'm kind of speculating. But
well, hey, book 17, Kelly.
Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Awesome, Kelly. I'm so sorry it's that time, so hold that right there. Stay tuned. We'll be back at the top of the second hour with Kelly Bulkeley here on Truth Brigade Radio. All right, welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Kelly Bulkeley here on Truth Brigade Radio, talking about dreams and dreaming tonight. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call at 402-237-2525. That's 402-AFR-2525. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at TruthBrigade.com. Kelly, I see we have a caller on the line, but if you would, please continue.
I was so alarmed that I'd gone over into our break. I think I forgot what I was saying. Sorry.
Oh, you did. You know what? We just get cut off sometimes, and it happens that way. So, why don't we?
All right. No, I went over.
Oh, no, it's okay. It happens. They'll cut us off. We can keep talking to ourselves all we want, but no one's going to hear us. So let's go to the next caller here tonight,
sure.
Area code 719. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi there.
I think you were on influence of planetary effects and stuff, right? Before the break.
There you go. Somebody's got a memory.
His 17th book.
There you
go. But I'm Ryan, anyway, calling from Colorado.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey.
I guess I had a question a little bit outside of what you guys are just talking about, but have you seen the movie Waking Life?
Yeah. Richard Linklater, yeah?
Yeah, they kind of give the impression that the waking or the dream world, maybe at one point was as real as the physical waking life.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good movie.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. They kind of like character color over the real actors. It's like part cartoon, part real actors.
It's a good kind of match of form and content in that way. Kind of cool filmmaking and cool dreamy topics. So what intrigues you about that movie?
Well, I guess the whole thing about the dream world being as real, at least at one point, as the waking life, and it kind of it does tie into the simpler tribal lives and how they were, like ayahuasca and all the rest.
Sure,
they have a pretty healthy diet of hallucinogens and things of that sort in that kind of environment. Maybe that plays to this idea that the dream world is as real.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the way the mind is working, in sleep and dreaming, and there are some things that are similar to what's going on in waking, and so it's not a crazy thought to think that if you practice certain meditative techniques or took certain substances or some combination thereof, you could kind of create or trigger a dreaming, visionary mode of perception in the waking state. That's totally possible, and I think, my training is in religious studies, because I think that's where a lot of the most interesting, sort of outgrowths of dreaming sort of go in that direction. And I guess the only thing I'd add to what you just said is that it kind of harkens back to maybe an earlier mode of possibilities, like you say, Waking Life, the movie is suggesting, but it also kind of looks forward too for like Buddhism and Hinduism that see that kind of realization as basically as enlightenment. Like if you can kind of dissolve the boundaries between dreaming and waking and real and unreal and mine and yours, that's enlightenment. So it's it's kind of both the early prehistory and in some traditions kind of the ultimate goal. So.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Actually, isn't the chamber in the top have like a zero magnetic field up there?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah, so it's supposedly perfect for meditating and being able to astral project, or to be able to what's it called? Well, not astral project, but actually just see things in other places.
Yeah.
Technical term with that.
Yeah, there's I don't know about the pyramid in particular, but there's all over the world there have been temples and mountaintop sanctuaries and caves and graveyards and other kind of sacred places where people have slept in quest of powerful dreams. So that I think the techniques that you're suggesting, they're all cousins. They're all kind of related. Different ways in, but kind of aiming at similar goals.
I lost where I was going with that. Okay. I kind of lost where I was going to go with that, I guess.
It's okay. You're doing great, Ryan.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that movie. That's definitely a good one. I thought you were going to start talking about Inception, because that's the dream movie everybody's.
Oh, I know where I was going with that. The electromagnetic field thing. If that's true about the Pyramid of Giza and these other places, have you ever looked into if people remembered their dreams more in the past than people do now because of the level of energetic saturation we have?
Oh, that's a really good question. The short answer is no, because we're just starting. The study of these things is still just so early in trying to gather data, and I sometimes use the analogy of standing under Niagara Falls with a Dixie cup. I'm trying to study Niagara Falls, and all I've got is this little teeny cup, and I know that there's all this stuff going on, and that's a great question. Wouldn't it be interesting to be able to kind of compare, broad cultural differences in something like dream recall?
you could probably still do it today. I mean, there's got to be some societies that aren't completely bathed in electricity.
Yeah. Although, I mean, this is the challenge with a lot of cross-cultural dream work is that in a lot of cultures that have been, really badly affected, to put it mildly, by sort of modernization and colonialism and all of that, for a lot of those cultures who have lost their land, they've lost their sacred places, they've lost their sort of economic base, the one thing that they often have that they hold on to is their dreaming and their dream traditions. And so it makes it both really interesting to learn about those traditions, but also difficult to get those people in those cultures to really honestly let you know what's going on, because it's like that's sometimes all they got left. And so it's I think what you're suggesting, it can be done, and it would be a super interesting thing to do. It's just I'm just thinking aloud here, like how would you actually make that happen? Because it's it's sacred ground for a lot of people. In the outside the Western world, dreaming is sacred. So,
yeah, you bring up the religious sites. I saw some research some years back that talked about like the rings or the mounds that are always surrounded by like sandstone with quartz and whatnot in it.
Yeah.
And there was a researcher down in Peru with all of his different electrical stuff and was trying to figure out if those pyramids emitted energy or this and that,
Yeah.
And they found that even through the, they're trying to figure out how the Incas survived, or the Mayans, on such little cropland for the amount of population they had. It wasn't supposed to be possible with, unhybridized seeds. You'd only get like 70%, and you'd have to keep some for growing your next crop and all the rest.
Right.
So they found that the indigenous always brought their seeds up to these temples, and they'd leave them there overnight, and then they'd take them and they'd have high 90% growth rate. They'd be more immune to drought and flooding and all the different things. And what they discovered is that like the witching hour, 3 o'clock, when the electromagnetic field switches, it's on the opposite side of the world and it switches, it actually created a genetic change within the seeds. And it made them hardier and all the rest. And then they started researching after that and found that's where all the shamans would want to go, and they'd have their spirit journeys and this and that, like Devil's Tower up in South Dakota.
Sure.
You're not allowed to go up there at night. I don't know if you knew that. You can go up there during the day, but as soon as it gets dark, you have to get down. It's like a tribal thing.
Right.
They don't let people up there, and it would induce. I don't know. That's where they'd go have their vision quest.
Right. Yeah, well, that's super interesting because the what's going on, sort of electrically in the brain during a lot of the sleep cycle is pretty intense and complicated. And I would, again, we're off in speculation land here, but it makes me think, even little external influences on what's going on in the brain in those states could totally influence what the person's dreaming about and the quality of that. So, if you were able to, if you knew that was coming, or if you had some experience with that and could, kind of cultivate an attunement, I suppose, with whatever those external.
It ties right back to where we were at the beginning.
Outside
influences. Yeah,
that's a cool idea. I'd love to, have the resources to either go to places like that, with people who have some, dreaming abilities, or just, more broadly, just like what are, like you sort of mentioned the, I think what I heard was sort of contemporary society and the saturation of electrical everything, and how that, is influencing people's dreams and, amping things up and dampening other things perhaps.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm actually one of those people that remember a lot of my dreams, most of my dreams, actually, and I have strange deja vus years apart from dreams, that I had years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I even woke up once and saw red for 2 hours. Had a really strong dream. I was able to remember it at the time. I don't now, but it was a real strange dream, and I actually saw red, like physically afterwards, like when I woke up.
Yeah,
2 hours. It was just, I've never had that effect happen on me, but strange deja vus and recurring dreams. So I'm one of those people that, would kind of go against the idea that electrical stuff has a lot of influence, but...
Well, who knows? Maybe everybody is, just possibly, it's been dampened down and you would have even more dreams otherwise. Who knows? That there's so much variability, a lot of times I'll say to people, the quantity of dreams you remember matters less than kind of the quality of the meanings that you draw from however many dreams you do remember. People can get kind of a spiritual materialism going about, how many dreams do you remember? Oh, I remember more than you do. That doesn't do anybody any good.
How do we know?
Yeah. It's more, however many dreams you remember, whatever dreams have made it across that perilous threshold from sleep into waking, what do they have to tell you? And that's I always feel like people get as many dreams as they can kind of handle and work with, and if your unconscious wants to send you more, it knows how to do that, and so as long as you're...
Who knows what that subconscious is tapped to anyway, Where does creativity come from, It's coming from the ether. You have to wonder if it's just like, the scientific view of defragging, like you were saying,
right,
computer, or if it's, maybe a tap into other information, trying to filter it into what you know. It's just as big of a possibility.
Yeah. No, there's a if I hear you right, there's a way of thinking of, the mind both awake and asleep as kind of like a radio, and we're just kind of, tuning into different aspects of reality, and when we go to sleep, maybe we spin the dial a little bit more and we tune into other aspects, and other aspects tune into us. So yeah, that's, again, the one thing I really resist in studying dreams is settling on any particular explanation or theory, because the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know, and the more complicated and amazing it really appears. And so, just
absolutely.
purely in terms of like doing good scientific research.
Right there, or who was that famous quote? The more we know, that's Socrates. The more we know, the more we realize we know nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Socrates. So this is a little historical story. So he was condemned to death by the city of Athens, right? So at the end of his life, and they said he was offending the gods, and so that was punishable by execution. And so he's awaiting execution, and like the day before he's supposed to die, his students come in to visit him, and they see him writing some things down. They say, "Socrates, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm writing some poems based on Aesop's fables, which are like children's stories back then." And his father's like, why are you doing that? He said, "Well, it's because I'm trying to obey a dream that I had, actually a recurrent dream." And he tells him that through his life he's had this recurrent dream saying Socrates practiced the arts. And he said that he had this dream over and over again, and he'd always thought that it meant, be a philosopher and do the good work that you're doing. But he said that as he was facing the end of his life and he was thinking about that dream, he thought, well, maybe it meant I should just do something artistic.
Okay, I'm sorry, Kelly. Gentlemen, it is that time, Ryan. Thank you so much for your call, but we're going to be right back after this short break, so stay tuned, everyone. Kelly Bulkeley here on Truth Brigade Radio. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Tonight, our special guest, Kelly Bulkeley. He is a dream researcher and author about dream research and psychology and various religions. The website is kellybulkeley.com. That's KELLYBULKELEY, and I'm posting his links and many others in the text chat over at TruthBrigade.com if you would like to join us. And it looks like Ryan is still on the line. So please, gentlemen, please continue.
I'm sorry, I was going on about this Socrates dream. I'll wind you up because it's just. I think
Socrates.
Yeah, well, just that his followers came in and found him, the day before he's going to die, and I think you'd expect like, oh, Socrates, he's going to be thinking big thoughts, he's going to be doing, summing up his life's work, and instead he's writing out a poem because he thinks that's what his dreams have been telling him to do. So it's, Socrates was, I think why, kind of came up with this was the idea that, the more we know, the less we know, the more we realize how little we know. Mm. And Socrates, right to the end of his life, I think kind of illustrated that by admitting to his followers, I'm at the end of my life and I still haven't figured it out. I'm still trying to think of, what are the different things my dreams might be telling me to do. So.
Mm-hmm. Didn't Socrates also say to the council that was deciding whether or not he'd live or die, right? Because he was persecuted, wasn't he, for his belief?
Say it again.
Socrates was persecuted at the end of his life. Like they put him to death, didn't they?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he also tell the council that, this could be the nicest thing he ever did for me? Like, if you're going to kill me, then, that could be the greatest thing ever. If there's nothingness, then, I did everything I wanted to in this lifetime, and if there is something past, then, I'll continue it there. Back and I'll you.
No, he was supposed to sort of bow down. Like, I think the city was like, you're going to finally admit that you were wrong because otherwise we're going to execute you. And he's like, no, fine, do what you got to do. I'm living my life according to my principles, and there's nothing better than that. And he really, it was a real, amazing articulation of kind of personal dignity, in the face of collective pressures to conform. He's a hero for a lot of people, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's all I got. Thanks a lot, Christie, for letting me on, and Mr. Bulkeley.
Good. Thanks. Good talking with you.
Ryan, great. Thank you for calling in. Great questions.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Thank you. We have some questions in the chat, but it looks like we just got another caller as well, Kelly. Area code 209. Welcome to the show.
Hi, this is John Owen from Mariposa, California.
Hi. I'm sorry. Can you repeat your name again, please?
John Owen. Actually, I go by Falcon.
Falcon. Okay. Welcome to the show. What's your question tonight?
Well, no question. It's just that you're talking about dreams, and I've interpreted dreams, and I do dream analysis for people.
Mm-hmm.
I've taught shaman classes and taken them on journeys.
And what kind of things interest you about dreams?
What was that?
What do you find interesting in your dream journeys?
Well, the thing is, you can do lucid dreaming and be out of body, astral project. If you're lucid, and you can kind of control a dream because you're lucid, and you can direct it and drive it around, you might say.
Yeah. There's a lot of interest in that aspect of dreaming. There, it's complicated because some aspects of dreaming, it seems, we can influence or control, and other aspects not so much. And so many cultural traditions, Hinduism and Buddhism, shamanic cultures, they have a lot of teachings around lucid dreaming and what's helpful and enlightening, and what can maybe just lead you into a dead end, and just maybe
well, if you're aware that you're lucid dreaming, you can bring your eye consciousness in there and kind of control things or direct it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Mm. Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to share with us tonight, Falcon?
Yes. When you dream of a house and it's being repaired, you're dreaming of your body.
Okay.
Yeah. How that's a classic sort of metaphorical meaning for house imagery in dreams. It's the sort of the external structure that in which we live. So that's.
A lot of times, I'm a psychic, and a lot of times people will come to me and they say, "What does it mean? I keep dreaming about a house."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're trying to reconstruct themselves.
Yeah. Well, there's and people who they're homeless. Maybe there's health issues. Yeah. No, the house is a great symbol.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Falcon, anything else?
That's about all I had to add, really.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for calling in.
Thank
you, and I like the way you work your show. You let people have
thank
a chance
you.
to talk.
Appreciate that.
Good. Thank you.
All right. You have a good night, Falcon. Thank you. Okay. All right. Kelly, here was a question on the text chat.
Sure.
It says, I was just wondering what the difference between a normal dream state and that of one in a coma, besides the obvious trauma of someone... I just lost it. There it is. Besides the obvious trauma of someone in a coma, is it the same dream state, or is there something else going on?
Yeah, I think that there's probably something else going on, in that this is right kind of on the edge of my own understanding, but I think that in a coma there's a really drastic diminishment of brain activity, and in sleep, and particularly in REM sleep, that's really not the case. In fact, the brain during REM sleep is like sort of electrically as active as the brain is while we're awake. So there's a lot going on when we're at least in REM sleep, and in other sleep stages as well. And like I said, if I'm right, and I'm not positive I am, but I think I am, that comas that involve a really low level of brain activity, I'm not sure that I'd call that dreaming. I mean, maybe there's something going on there. Who knows? But it's not. I would say the differences outweigh the similarities in terms of relations to sort of ordinary dreams.
Okay. All right. Very well. I'd like to get back to recurring dreams, because that's come up a few times here in the program, and I've read a few comments on the chat about it, and I myself have also had recurring dreams, some of which that I believe, have been going on pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
I think others have also experienced at least similar things, or they've said that they've experienced the, recurring dreams for several years at least. And some of them, they're kind of like movies. They pick up where they left off, or you go back to this familiar place. What are your thoughts on what's going on there, or why that would be happening?
Yeah, well, there's always been an awareness. I think people have always known that when a dream recurs, there's something kind of extra going on. And, you go back to the Bible and Genesis 40 and 41 and the story of Joseph and the baker and the butler and the Pharaoh and such, and the Pharaoh, has these two dreams of the grains of the ears of grain and the cows, and Joseph says, the doubling of the dream, that's significant. That means that what's being portrayed is really going to happen. And not that every dream has prophetic meaning necessarily, but that insight of Joseph, that when a dream is doubled, when there's sort of this repetition aspect to it, it sure gives the sense that there's something extra important there. And for dreams that people have throughout their lives, that recur over long periods of time, I think those types of dreams tend to be mirrors in some ways of important themes or issues that are kind of defining for that person and his or her life. They're kind of ways of looking at the world. And for me, I have recurrent sports dreams. Going back to my days of wanting to play for the Giants, and the way of looking at the world through a kind of a sports lens, that comes up in my life, in my dreams now. Not that I've played those sports anytime recently, but that they kind of establish a template, if you will, of later dream experience. And so I think sometimes people who have recurrent dreams throughout their lives, those are their own personal templates of meaning, of some way of making sense of the world, and then something new comes along and the dream kind of fits it into that established way of looking at things. That's, just some thoughts about it. I mean, do you have like what aspects of your dreams have been, which have been the recurrent aspects, like are particular characters or settings or just the interactions?
The settings in mine are the same. It's almost like I'm going back home, wherever that is. Nothing of, significance that I can remember that would relate to this life as I know it. But for instance, somebody just put in a chat, they say that they keep going back to a dilapidated house in their recurring dream. And so I'm wondering if these, what we call dreams could sometimes perhaps be memories, maybe suppressed memories or traumas in this life or from past lives.
Sure. I mean, all of the above. I mean, there's, again, when the dreaming imagination kind of goes to the trouble of repeating, a similar theme or image or setting, it does have the feeling of it, kind of an invitation to pay more attention.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes I compare it to like one of my kids when they were younger. They're trying to get my attention. Dad. Like they have to repeat themselves. They have to kind of keep saying something to get my attention. And so sometimes I think with recurrent dreams, particularly ones that lead into kind of like the one you just mentioned about the dilapidated house, like if there's some kind of mysterious or eerie quality about where the recurrent dream is leading or beckoning, that to me starts to sound like, is there a shadow dimension to this? Is there some aspect of myself that this recurrent dream is calling me to pay attention to? And if I, before going to sleep, think to myself, if I go back to that place, if I go back to that house again, I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to not be afraid. I'm not going to worry. I'm going to, see what's there. And I think sometimes recurrent dreams are like I said, kind of inviting us to reflect on them and try to tease out their meanings as they relate to our waking lives.
Okay, and maybe if they are memories, maybe there's something that we need to pay attention to or something pertinent in this life. But, I mean, oh my gosh, there's so much to say here. But let me just ask you this to kind of sum it up. Is it possible that this is the dream
this reality, right? Like,
yeah. And I'll tell you why I ask that. And, oh, gosh, we're almost running out of time here, too. But, you know, I've had dreams where, like I said, my recurring dreams, many of them are very familiar to me. It feels like, I can relax. I'm finally home. And I've had some where I am in this place, wherever it is, and we're kind of, me and my friends or my teacher, I'll just refer to him as teacher because I don't really have a name for him, but we're kind of joking around that, ha, you thought that was real. I'm going to jump in the body, and you're not going to fool me this time. I'm going to be able to tell the difference between the so-called real state and the dream state. You're not going to fool me. Then I jump in my body, and then, of course, forget all about it. But, I'm just wondering, I mean, maybe this is the dream. Maybe we're somewhere else saying, hey, I had this dream. I was on this weird radio show, but it's that time. So we'll talk about that when we return from this short break here on Truth Brigade Radio. All right, welcome back. My goodness, how time flies. Last segment here tonight with our special guest tonight, Kelly Bulkeley. He is a dream researcher and author. You can find all of his great articles and works and books over at kellybulkeley.com. And, okay, so, what I was trying to say before I got cut off before the break, maybe this is the dream. Maybe in our sleep time, and, or what we refer to as our dream time, maybe we have, some friends over there. Hey, I had this really weird dream. I think I was like a radio host or something. And, it was just so weird. I can't describe it. And, it's just, I guess after, and you've been studying this for many decades, so it's hard to draw that line on what exactly is real or what is not. But I tell you that those dreams with, I'll just call him the teacher, where I come back, those are like really vivid, and I'm like, you're not going to fool me. I'm going to be able to tell that, which one is really real, and then I get tossed back into my body again, and then come here and get convinced that this is all real again, and
Well, it's a classic dilemma, that really goes to the. Now we're going into the deep end. You're talking about, what does this dream mean or that dream mean? That's still kind of in the shallows. But you start asking these questions, and you realize, this really opens up, fundamental questions about sort of what is real? Who are we? And in Taoism, the Chinese mystical tradition, there's the famous story, this Taoist teacher named Zhuang Ji, who had the butterfly dream. You've heard this one, where he says he was having this dream of being a butterfly, and he's flying, and he's free, and he's floating about in the sunshine, and then he wakes up, and he's back being a human named Zhuang Ji, and he says it made him wonder, was he Zhuang Ji who just dreamed of being a butterfly, or is he a butterfly who's now dreaming of being Zhuang Ji? And the answer in Taoism, anyway, is doesn't matter. You're both, and you're neither. Our existence is a ever flowing series of transformations from one way of being to another. So dreaming definitely can elicit these questions, where you have a dream that's so real, so intense, so vivid that you can't help but think, that's as real as anything is. How can I not call that real when it has all of those qualities? So this is one of the reasons why dreams freak people out. Why some people think that dreams are the work of the devil and are not healthy and not good to be poking around in, because they destabilize, potentially at least, your sort of the
what we think we understand as reality. Yeah. Okay. No, it's let me ask you this. We have a few short minutes left. Another common theme that we hear about in dreaming is running, whether running away from some kind of villain or running to something and, not being able to run, stumbling down or slow motion. What could be the reason for those types of dreams? Yeah. Well, it's kind of there's a paradox there because when we're asleep and dreaming, our things are happening in our body that keep us motionless, right? So that we don't actually get up and run around when we're having a dream of running around. But we're able in our dreams to have that full sensory experience of running. And I think that one way that we look at dreams, I think, is in terms of functions, is that dreams are a way of kind of rehearsing for possible things we might have to do in the waking world, and that might not necessarily be things that you in your individual life do. I don't know whether or not you run a lot in your waking life, but humans over the ages, like being able to run, particularly if there's, say, a tiger or a raiding tribe attacking you, like you have to be able to run. And so dreams often have themes and types of settings that, if you think about it, relate back to kind of basic survival requirements for our species. And so, recurrent running dreams, or the fact that we often find ourselves running in dreams, can sometimes just be because that's just kind of keeping our running senses and our awareness of that available should we ever need to do that in the waking world. Or maybe we're confusing it with our physical. I mean, because flying is so easy in dreams, flying, time travel, everything else. But, you get on the sidewalk and try to run, and all of a sudden we're incapacitated. Definitely a lot to ponder there.
Well, that too. Okay, so right. I mean, I was talking sort of about dreams where you are running, but then, right, you bring in the paralysis, or the kind of so slow, and there does seem to be something seeping in there about gravity and about our bodies and the limits of our bodies. So those are scary dreams. Some people find those really disturbing.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you this. And our first caller, Louis, who forgot what he called in for, this another dream that people bring up a lot are fighting in their dreams. And in his particular situation, he seems to end up in places, and he's pretty much like Mighty Mouse. Here I come to save the day, fighting off, some kind of villain, but not just in a physical human body. He's had recurring dreams where he's a dog or a coyote or German shepherd, somewhere where he jumps out of the woods and saves a little girl or saves a family repeatedly. What would you attribute those types of dreams to?
Yeah, well, a study I did a little while ago, I was looking at a guy's dreams, and I didn't know anything about him, and there were a lot of dreams kind of like that with some fighting and chasing and such, and I assumed that there were a lot of nightmares. But when I asked the guy, he said no, they weren't nightmares. Actually, they were kind of adventures, and he liked them. And so it kind of, that experience taught me to look sometimes at dreams like that as expressing kind of a healthy desire for adventure and heroism. That sometimes dreams, even if they've got some scary content or some conflict or some fighting, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, oh, there's some some traumatic event causing this. Rather, it can be kind of this guy that I talked to before likened it to like the pleasure of playing video games. That you get to kind of imagine what would it be like to be a heroic superhero, and saving the day.
What if you really are a superhero saving the day, say in other parts of the world or astral or other planets or, alternate realities? I guess it could be any or all of the above.
Well, sure. And people who are leading, seemingly mild, normal lives could in their dreams be, journeying to all sorts of places and fighting battles and gaining victories that no one else might know anything about. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Kelly, I have so many more questions, but we just have about a minute left, unfortunately, tonight. So let me ask you something. I'd love to have you back in the future.
Sure.
But is there anything that we did not talk about tonight that you would you feel is important to share with us?
It never came up, but I co-wrote a book with my mother some years ago about dreams right before death, and the dreams that people have in the final days and weeks and hours of life, and that's a really interesting phenomenon too. And just any listeners who are in the position of helping care for people who are dying, be on the lookout for interesting dreams and visions. They can be kind of final gifts in people's lives.
Okay, very good advice. Now, we can get your books at your website, right?
Yeah, through there to Amazon or publishers
Okay, all right. So your website, I'm going to spell that one more time. That's Kelly Bulkeley, KELLYBULKELEY.com. That's BULKELEY.com. I definitely want to know more about the dreams before dying and had a bunch of other notes, prophetic dreams and such. But it is that time, Kelly. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your time and wisdom with us.
No, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate having a chance to chat with you and your listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. And I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Abundant blessings and love to all. Project Camelot coming up next, so stay tuned. And we will see you tomorrow night with Tobias Lars here on Truth Brigade Radio.